Very sad news, and that is that Martin Luther King was and was tonight. Remember?
I'm gonna be there. I'll see you next lifetime. I guess I will now. I guess I'll see you and it's spinning all around. Yeah. You need
We will return to breaking down the fake later, but for now let's try to understand all of this from the beginning. Martin Luther King appeared, out of nowhere, just out of school, to be elected as president of the Montgomery Improvement Association in 1955, with Edgar Nixon as treasurer. This makes no sense. He has an extensive IMDb. But let's focus on Martin Luther King. MLK got his PhD from Boston University in the summer of 1955, and by December of that year he was already elected as president of the MIA. How? Over Edgar Nixon. He had only been back in Montgomery a matter of months. Of course, nothing about MLK's early bio makes any sense.
That I think is interesting for showing how the CIA could stimulate conspiracy.
For instance, he is supposed to have gotten a BA, 4 years, a Master of Divinity, 3 years, and a PhD, 5 to 6 years, by the time he was 26. Even if he did the BA in 3 years and the PhD in 4, that is still 10 years in college at age 26. Sounds like a tale to me. You would say he was a genius, but if so, why did he need to plagiarize his dissertation? They insert all sorts of apologetics to explain that, but to me, it is simply evidence of a larger fake. The dissertation was probably inserted later as part of his fake bio, and I doubt he wrote any of it. It was written by the cubicle agents at the CIA. Just as in his first TV appearance, it seems as if he's struggling to read something he supposedly wrote.
An inexperienced but determined Dr. King discussed the aims of the boycott in his first filmed interview.
That the seating arrangement would be changed to a first-come, first-served basis.
Follow his eyes as he looks up and down. He's reading something. Listen to his speech patterns. He breaks and struggles.
That Negro passengers would seat from the rear to the front of the bus and the white passengers from the front to the rear, with no reserved seats for any race. That Negro bus drivers would be employed, particularly on predominantly Negro lines. Decided not to ride the buses in Montgomery until we receive some justice and until we get a hearing, even if it takes a year.
Bio is replete with numerology markers. He gave his first sermon in 1947. Martin Luther King's entire output was ghostwritten by ghosts, that is to say, Central Intelligence Agency. Support for that comes from the submission by the editors of the Martin Luther King papers, who said that the failure of MLK's teachers to notice his plagiarism was remarkable. They likely knew the papers were written by the CIA, and so were in no position to downgrade them. This is also interesting. This has been reprinted by some websites. Previously we talked about how communism is a fake organization and always has been. I show this not to prove Martin Luther King was communist. It's to prove MLK was in intel, like these people he is sitting with. While they were faking and controlling the communism project, MLK was faking and controlling the civil rights project.
I guess I'll see you next lifetime.
Let's just say that the whole civil rights movement looks managed. The governors could probably see they had to do something, but rather than let things proceed naturally and risk fast and meaningful change, they took control of events and managed them for the minimal inconvenience to themselves. As usual, they needed to give the appearance of progress, while stifling most real progress. It is very easy to see this with the Rosa Parks event, which they pretty much admit was staged. For the next big clue, we go to Stanley Levison, MLK's advisor, close friend, and ghostwriter. That information is not from Stormfront, that is from Wikipedia and Stanford. Levison was a Jewish attorney from New York. He went to Columbia and the New School, both red flags. We have seen the New School in many of these hoaxes. It was founded and funded by Hiram Halley, Jewish, and the Rockefeller Foundation, Jewish. It is one of the premier propaganda and CIA academies in the world, poorly disguised. Levison was a leader of the American Jewish Congress and had also been a leader of the Communist Party. He has no genealogy posted. Levison looks very much like an agent, and he was probably the head of the CIA cubicle that typed out all of Martin Luther King's writings. It is amazing how little is known of this man.
It picks me, but you don't want to come down. You got me spinning on the ground.
But how did MLK harm the movement? The greatest damage MLK did was with his fake death, but if you don't understand why it was faked, it may be hard to understand how, but let's try to make sense of all of it. It was faked as a warning to uppity blacks. This is what will happen to you if you push for real change. Some dopey white guy will you when you aren't paying attention. Like most of the other events we have put under a microscope, Tupac, Biggie, Assata, etc., it was staged to create fear. The KKK was invented for the same purpose. Intelligence discovered long ago that a fake event beat a real event every time. In this way, they could create all the fear without any risk to themselves. You can't be prosecuted for a fake crime, can you? You can't be prosecuted for a fake beating, or a fake lynching. But the fakes create the same fear and chaos as the real thing. It is all part of Operation Chaos.
You need to know.
Let's move on to the fake. It is said that Martin Luther King's final trip to Memphis spanned 32 hours from April 3rd to 4th, so let's deconstruct what they've reconstructed.
But still, it ain't that type of party now. And I suppose that you want me to do.
I've come to the conclusion that the alleged assassination did not take place on the day or time they claim. Pay attention to the footage. The footage shown is 2 different days pieced together. Notice Jesse Jackson's shirt change. And they cut the camera just as he walked to his room. Here we see Jesse Jackson in 2 different shirts. The problem is that the day before Martin Luther King's fake death, Jesse wore this same shirt on the left, yet on the day of the fake assassination, Jesse Jackson was seen in the same shirt. All they did was change the jacket. The slight color difference is due to the color edit, but it's definitely the same shirt. Jesse Jackson was one of the puppets that would be in the spotlight during this hoax, so they needed to change something.
Knocked him up off of his feet in that direction against that ledge over there.
Here's Jesse Jackson in Martin Luther King's last speech, the day before the alleged assassination.
I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
You could say he changed, but what about the guy in the corner? He's there in the same outfit for both of Jesse Jackson's outfits. I guess they thought no one would pay attention to him.
I know I'm selfish, but I can't watch you.
My point is, it's all a stage play. They probably recorded this scene multiple times. I doubt if the shoot took place at the time they claimed. It also makes no sense. We were told MLK always stayed in room 306 at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. Wikipedia said it was known as the King Abernathy Suite. That contradicts earlier parts of the history, where it is admitted the king was known to be a target. He had allegedly survived previous assassination attempts. Given that, it would be the height of stupidity to stay in the same room at the same hotel that often. It breaches all the rules of security. You might as well call up the hitman in advance. His loitering on the balcony is also against all rules of security. Another thing that indicates that this was a military operation is that he was allegedly shot at 6:01 p.m. Dopey criminals who leave their rifles in plain sight after a murder aren't normally that punctual, but military intelligence is. The military does things by the clock. The motel owner's brother Thetrice Bailey seems to be trying to scoop Martin Luther King's from the ground into a jar. He's also military. Which brings us to the This doesn't look like real blood. In fact, it looks too thick. It resembles paint or fake blood they used in movies during the 1960s. Look at the pool of blood he's laying in. It looks Hollywood. The viscosity, the textures aren't right. To me, it looks like this fake blood in the picture. They also said the police were there in a matter of seconds.
When coming this way, asking us what happened, you know.
Just that quick?
Just that quick, yeah. In a matter of seconds.
So how did so much pour out to the left side of his body? To me, it appears as if they poured the liquid on the cement first, and Martin Luther King laid on the ground. I always wondered why Martin Luther King had this light mark on the side of his face in one of his last photos.
Guess I will now.
It's in the same location they claim he was. Google this image, you will see the same light mark on all photos of this exact image. Maybe it was just a signal so that everyone around knew where the impact was supposed to be. I'm sure they recorded the entire It's safely stored away in the CIA locked archives. Amazingly, the stain dried, leaving no trace in a matter of hours. Well, they said the cleanup guy was scooping his to put it in a jar. Maybe the was actually clay. Honestly, I wouldn't doubt it. Martin Luther King's fake was released in black and white, no cell phones, not everyone running to the crime scene with handheld cameras. The government could get away with anything they wanted by way of radio and TV. This was taken by Joseph Lau before Ray had even left the premises. Lau was there so fast because he was staying 3 doors down. Lau was a photographer and filmmaker working on a documentary about King, and he just happened to be there ready to roll. That photo is probably a paste-up. Why? Well, study the people on the ground. They don't seem too concerned, do they? You have a dying man above them bleeding to by a high-caliber rifle, and at least 6 people screaming and pointing, but the people on the ground are just continuing their casual conversations. Look at the group of maids over there having a smoke, totally unaware of the scene around them. So it may interest you to know that this Joseph Lau was rushed to the studio by a fellow King photographer Ernest Withers to develop his 4 rolls of film. Withers was at the Lorraine with Lau, and as one of those going in and out of room 306, Withers was posthumously outed as an FBI informant. The mainstream media tried to spin that revelation in 2008, claiming Withers was a spy against King. But of course, the better explanation is that all these people were FBI or CIA, including King. The whole event was a project. There were no shits from anywhere.
Know just how strong that my love is. You need to know what you do to me.
In the motel room, getting out, getting ready to go to dinner. He was going to my house for dinner, as a matter of fact.
What's the latest report?
And as he was going to my house for dinner, as a matter of fact.
What's the latest report?
And as he came out about 3 minutes after he had come out, the shot rang out. But as he came out the door, and then we heard I had left him and started across.
Until it hit his face, it sounded like a stick of dynamite or a large firecracker. Stay over our heads because you did not hear a shot, you just saw the explosion in his face. It sounded like a stick of dynamite or a large firecracker.
Notice how they made sure to mention the police were around. I think they're already introducing the conspiracy. The government killed him.
Really didn't have my back to where the shot came from. And when I turned all the way around, we saw the sheriff or the police up on the hill.
Oh yes, we heard the shot, definitely. And then we looked in this direction and we saw policemen coming this way, asking us what happened, you know.
Just that quick?
Just that quick, yeah.
When we turned, all we could see was police coming. Police were coming from the direction of the shot.
The elites are decades ahead of us. But let's move on. Let's look into Martin Luther King's James Earl Ray. None of those pictures really match with what we are told about him, do they? In the first, they have given him an army cut to look like a hick. It doesn't really work. He still looks way too intelligent to be who we are told he is. In the second, he is supposed to have been in jail for many years, but again, the way he looked, too clean. In the third, he looks like an accountant. At what point in his life of crime was that supposed to have been taken? Ray's wiki page reads like bad fiction. For instance, he is supposed to have escaped from the maximum security prison in Missouri in 1967 by hiding in a bread truck, leaving the prison bakery. Right. He is believed to have been sentenced to 4 years in Leavenworth for stealing money orders in Hannibal. The only thing I believe on the whole page is that he was in the army. I would have guessed that, or Navy. I doubt he ever left it. He looks like military intelligence.
I guess I'll see you next lifetime.
James Earl Ray had a second alias, which he allegedly gave to the guy he bought his Game Master rifle from in Birmingham, Harvey Lohmeyer. Ask yourself this, why would he come up with a Jewish name? If you were creating aliases, would you create a Jewish one? Do you really think this Irish Catholic would come up with a Jewish alias? After the alleged Ray dumped his rifle and binoculars near the murder site, without even bothering to bury them. He also didn't bother to wipe them down. They had his fingerprints all over them. He then pled guilty. This doesn't happen. It also conflicts with the prior story, since we are supposed to believe Ray was smart and clever enough to escape a maximum security penitentiary and avoid capture for almost a year, but not smart enough to wear gloves, wipe fingerprints, or hide a gun. 1 minute he is a genius, and the next minute he is an imbecile.
I'm so confused now.
Ray supposedly fled to Canada, obtaining a passport under the fake name Ramon George Snade. He could not have acquired a Canadian passport under a fake name since security is not that sloppy. He might have manufactured one, but that would make him a genius again. Or an agent. William Pepper later proved that the passport was issued by Kennedy Travel Bureau in Toronto. Of course, it was. He somehow got a flight to England using this fake passport, which is highly unlikely. He then tried to use the fake passport again at Heathrow, making him an imbecile once more. Once in England, he could get anywhere in Europe easily by boat or train, so there was no reason to keep risking the fake passport. At Heathrow, we were told the ticket agent flagged the name on the passport since the name Sneyd was on a Canadian police watch list. Why would it be on a watch list? How could the police have known he faked a passport under the name Sneyd? Were they filming him while he created it? We would have to believe another man named Sneyd just happened to be on a Canadian watch list. Do you know the odds against that? Sneyd is a very rare name, which means there were only a handful in Canada in 1968. The odds against Ray making up the very rare name Sneyd and it being on the watch list are astronomical. We are told James Earl Ray's attorney Percy Foreman recommended he plead guilty to avoid a possible death penalty. Great attorney. So Ray is now an imbecile again, not realizing immediately he needed an attorney who thought he could get him off. You don't need an attorney to tell you to plead guilty. Plus, the story again contradicts itself. If we go to Foreman's wiki page, we are told he lost only 53 of 1,500 death penalty cases. With a record like that, he should have been more confident, but that makes no sense, either. 1,500 death penalty cases. How old was Foreman in 1969? He must have been 300. No, he was 67, so he should have been retired. But says he worked as a defense attorney for 35 years. That would be 43 death penalty cases a year, every year. That's about one a week every week for 35 years. Absurd.
Everybody really feels it all over the nation, and I really don't think that it was necessary, because now, in my opinion, it's going to provoke more violence. I think all this rioting and so forth is really nonsense, but I was really shocked about Martin Luther King. He wanted this nonviolence and so forth, but the people more or less just going out rebelling against it because it was a real big blow, in my opinion, to the entire nation.
Another desired outcome of this faked assassination was race wars, which they came nearer achieving back then than they do now. Although they are still at it, some shake their heads, but no one even thinks of starting a race war. So all we see is the news writers writing for one another. They are hired to supply the required outrage. They create the event and then create the response, so it is okay if you sleep through it. It doesn't matter anymore. All along, they have been faking these things to keep your eyes off the real events. Anything to keep you from realizing the bankers, the military, and intelligence are just three big money pits, siphoning money directly out of the treasuries and giving you absolutely nothing in return. We can now add science to that list since it has become the fourth largest con job. They're all Masonic, took an oath to lie to us. Martin Luther King predicted his own death at his last speech at a Mason temple.
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. I just want to do God's will, and He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, so I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory.
As they arrested James Earl Ray, the officer gave the old Masonic hand sign. Martin Luther King's son visits James Earl Ray in this staged prison meeting.
Did you kill my father?
No, I didn't know.
Look at the handshake. Masonic. They all know. Martin Luther King never died on April 4th. I'd say that's why they're all filled with duping delight during their interview after the fake assassination.
I want to be a preacher like my father.
You do? And this is Bunny.
Mommy, I'm not going to cry because my dad is not dead. He may be dead physically. And one day, I'm going to see him again.
But how can we explain the body? We saw the funeral, we saw the open. Dude, YouTube slowly taking away freedom of speech, partly because of channels like mine. I will not show much. Let's just say, most of the funeral pictures they show were filled with the people who were at the fake. or those close to him. I would not doubt that they took a set of pictures privately and prior to the funeral. They could have used the real Martin Luther King to lay there while the photographer takes the pictures. For public viewing, they could have used a wax body enclosed behind the glass. Maybe that explains why they kept switching. Some rare pictures of MLK behind the glass look as if it could be a fake. I can't show much here. However they pulled it off was genius. We only saw the public crying, while Martin Luther King's close friends and immediate family kept smiles and dry eyes, no tears. We have all been fooled by our leaders and heroes. None of them are who we thought they were. They are all actors sent in to control us. In the case of civil rights, we have been controlled to celebrate a progress that is illusory. We are assured things are getting better as they stay the same or get worse. We are fed some meaningless advances, while all meaningful change is denied us. This applies equally to men and women, black and white, young and old. Black see people like Oprah and Tyler Perry getting rich and think that things are changing. We saw Obama become president and think things are changing. But those are just sweetened pacifiers. They are meaningless since those people are just actors. They are puppets on a stage, dangled to divert you. They apparently named the holiday after the wrong guy. They should have picked a real black leader, not this actor who did nothing for civil rights, but sully it and misdirected. It is the same with Rosa Parks. She was a propped-up white creation actor, and her promotion has only harmed the movement. The truth is always better than a stage play. Why have civil rights led by these 3/4 whites pretending to be black? I guess it was meant for the whitest blacks only.